Should have told you that. Don't turn that dial. If you do, you're going to miss a really, really, really good show, because our guest this evening is Amy Walter. Most important thing, she is a fellow at the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago, started by David Axelrod about 1.5 years ago. Everybody would know David Axelrod was like the creator of Barack Obama. More about that during the show. More about Amy Walter in the Cook Political Report. Don't you turn that dial, or you're going to miss a really, 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 really good show. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics this evening, because we have as our guest, as I promised, Amy Walter, who is the national editor of the Cook Political Report. So people who've been watching me for like 16 years trying to learn politics and say, gee, damn it, when's he ever going to learn politics? Well, when he speaks to Amy Walter from the Cook Political Report. So seriously, thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome.
And we're just talking before the show, more about Amy as we get into it. You should know that she went to Colby. When did you graduate from Colby?
So we're starting with getting my age out there.
No.
All right, it's okay, 1991.
1991.
Yes.
I mean, I only asked that because that would mean you've been doing politics now for about 22
Plus years, yes.
It's like all the time, right? You probably were doing it before. We're not even going to ask. She knows so much about TV. She's been on ABC. She's covered presidential elections. When I grow up, I want to be like Amy Walter.
Thank you.
All right, so we're talking before the show. We didn't mention, but here's the thing that came to me just before, the Tea Party.
Yes.
Is the Tea Party really good for America? Because most of the mainstream media say, oh, the Tea Party, it's been screwing things up for the Republican Party. I'm sort of a contrarian. If the mainstream media say something, I think it's probably wrong. Now, you're part of the mainstream media, so your job on this show is to defend it.
Oh, that means really? I have to take a side now?
No, but
this
seriously,
is, sort of like
is the Tea Party, forget what I just said, is the Tea Party good for America?
Look, throughout the American history, there are movements or moods that impact a party or both parties or the political environment. And it's clear that the Tea Party, which I think started off as a mood, has sort of turned into its own movement, which then has been absorbed by the Republican Party. Either party could have taken them in, right? They're really more comfortable being a third party. And the Republican Party took them in.
That couldn't be more wrong, excuse me, because I just
how
said.
So?
Because they didn't believe, I usually have it, but it's screwed up. I usually carry the Constitution in my pocket, and so the one time I want it, it's not there. But they believe in the Constitution, they believe in limited spending, they believe in less taxes, they believe in less regulation. I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think this is a group of people with a very consistent and solid core set of beliefs. The Democratic Party, you would know.
Maybe let's say this.
They couldn't believe in any of the things that I just said, could they?
Maybe it's better to say this.
Okay.
I think there is a reason to believe that you could have a Tea Party as its own separate entity over here, closer to the Republican Party, right?
Right.
And so if we had a system, we did not have a two-party system. If we had multiple parties, we had a parliamentary system, you would see the Republicans and the Tea Party, you could see liberals and more mainstream, sort of business-oriented Democrats, all right? Now, on some issues, for example, NSA spying, you're gonna get liberals and the Tea Party agreeing, more so than the establishment parts of...
Extreme liberals.
Yeah, but there are a lot of liberals that are furious about whether it's
right. That's
NSA,
the one thing. Right.
Drones. I think you're going to hear a lot more about that when we get into 2016. We haven't heard much about it right now, but I think if you're going to talk about on issues like military intervention, spying, that's where you can get liberals and Tea Party. On constitutional...
but excuse me, the libertarian wing of the Tea Party is what you're articulating.
Correct.
There are other people...
Absolutely true.
I'm guessing even the majority are not libertarians, at least on foreign policy in the Tea Party. Would you agree with me on that?
I don't know. I don't know that there is such a thing. This is the problem. There is no such thing as a Tea Party member. They do not have a national organization. They do not have a party plank. They do not have a convention. They do not have elected leaders. People describe themselves as a Tea Party, and what that means is I am anti-establishment. I think that's first and foremost, if you describe yourself as Tea Party. You say, I'm a conservative, but I do not align myself with these national conservative voices.
This. Would you say that most of the people in these groups called the Tea Party, although they haven't registered, they don't have a card that says Tea Party member, but there are numerous Tea Parties around the country, right? Tea Party groups. Would you say the great majority of them don't think Obamacare is a good thing?
Yeah, I would say 100% of them.
Okay,
so
that's one really big thing that unites these people, that those people on that issue could not have gone to the Democratic Party.
Of course not.
And, you know, just right to the point, we were talking about how good George Stephanopoulos, we were talking about this before the show, and I meant that sincerely, but he doesn't really get some things, okay? I mean, he and the mainstream media don't get this one simple thing about Obamacare. There is something in this country called the free market. And I think Tea Party people, by being opposed to Obamacare, they generally favor the free market. They want to be able to be free to make choices. Here, this book, Free to Choose.
The Runaway Bunny.
Not the Runaway Bunny, I would say, but Free to Choose, we should show that here. Free to Choose by Milton and Rose Friedman. I think that's the essence of most of the discussion. I mean, because you see Ezekiel Emanuel, you know, brother of Rahm, ethics advisor to Barack Obama. He's defending Obamacare, and he says, look, people say, well, they've cut out programs. Just remember, I've got to keep this short. Barack Obama said, if you like your plan and you want to keep it, nobody's going to take it away. A flat-out bald lie. Isn't that true? A lot of plans have been terminated because they don't comply with Obamacare. Right. Isn't it a flat-out lie? Look, I love Barack. I shouldn't say I love him, but I like him. He was on the show 6 times. I respect him. He's smart. But he's doing what all politicians do. He's no better, no worse. He doesn't transcend politics, as I once said, because it's a flat-out lie. You can, because they've cut out plans. If I wanted a plan that was cheaper because hypothetically, say there's a person out there who's male and 60 years old, unlikely to get pregnant. His wife, if he has one, is unlikely to get pregnant. He doesn't want maternity care, okay? He has a program that doesn't. What is it? Obamacare says you must have, every program must have Obamacare. And Ezekiel Emanuel says, well, that's just because they should have good plans. It's like when we require cars to have catalytic converters. Well, defend that. Defend Ezekiel.
No, I'm not going to go up and defend. Look, here's what I'll say about the healthcare issue.
I mean, that whole tirade. Did I get that right? Does George get that? Does the mainstream media get it? That
I think
people want choices. They don't want to be told what to do.
I think that what the coverage of Obamacare, just overall, I think it's been very clear from the start of this through now, has been a debate in theory. Right? Nobody knows exactly how this is going to turn out. And the story is going to continue to develop over the course of the next 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. And so I appreciate and understand when you have people who have insurance, they are mostly happy with the current insurance they have. They think that making changes to that program in any way, shape, or form is not going to be beneficial to them. Right. So I completely understand that there is concern that something is going to happen that is really ultimately going to make things worse for me and my family. We were doing just fine. Now this new program is going to come in. I'm happy to let other people, I would love everybody to have health care, but a lot of folks say, yes, I want everybody to have health care, but if it impacts my own.
That's why, with all due respect, President Obama made that statement. And I think maybe when he made that statement that if you like your plan, nobody will take it away. I think maybe he believed it, but I don't know how. I mean, Here's the quote from George Stephanopoulos. We're taping this show on October 28th. So on Sunday, October 27th, really, folks, one of the best shows on the Sunday programs this week with George Stephanopoulos, a very diverse, ideologically diverse panel.
Yep.
But here's George Stephanopoulos. They are paying more, but paying more for a better policy. He's talking about acknowledging that people under Obamacare will be paying more, but paying more for a better policy. But who decides? Did George decide it's a better policy? Why? Because it has maternity care? Well, some people want maternity care, but some people don't. Some people want all sorts of things that will cost more and better. George, should we all drive around in BMWs? Could we all afford to? Some of us want to drive in, I don't know, like, if they still have them, a Ford Taurus, you know, the cheapo cars. That's the point of free to choose. That's the dividing line between, what should be, between the Republican Party. If the Republican Party understood what they were about, that should be the dividing line. They want people to be free to choose. The Democratic Party wants to tell you what you should choose. Am I simplifying or getting it?
Sure.
Isn't that the battle
you're
of Obama?
simplifying it.
I mean, isn't that what on domestic policy it's about? Because they are the party of regulation. They are the party of saying you shouldn't want. I mean, it's like, what's his name? The mayor of New York, Bloomberg.
Yeah.
He's really a Democrat because he says you shouldn't want 16-ounce drinks, right? Or 32-ounce drinks.
I think you can have a 16-ounce drink.
But you see what I mean? He's ready to tell somebody it's unhealthy. This country, we were just talking before, we could get the shot up of the USS Constitution again on that baseball, because that's why people fought the war in 1776, isn't it?
And 1812.
And 1812. They wanted to be free. They didn't want taxes on their tea, thus the name the Tea Party, certainly from not a foreign nation. So more than 200 years later, we're relitigating this. Isn't that strange?
No. I think that most people, their perception of politics is colored by, one, their own experiences, two, their partisan affiliation. And what you'll find is the people's perception of policy is not always consistent, all right? So what we saw, for example, on so many issues that the Obama administration has brought up that were either the same as a Republican brought up, you found that Democrats who opposed what George W. Bush did suddenly supported what Barack Obama did. Republicans who liked what George W. Bush did hate it when Barack Obama does it. So what I'm saying is if you really went through every single policy position and every single vote taken by the two parties over the course of the last 20 years, you would find a tremendous number of inconsistencies. Look, the healthcare plan, obviously this was talked about a lot in 2012. So much of the foundation of the Obama healthcare was based on not only what a Republican governor had done in Massachusetts, but the framework that had been set up by Republicans in the Senate back in 1994 and 1995. So there are pieces of all of that. The way it was done in a party line fashion only ignited a lot of that frustration, that it was pushed upon us, that it was a my way or the highway. By the way that the actual legislation got cobbled together, that soured so many people from the very beginning.
You've lurched inevitably into the truth, seriously. Eureka, you've got it. Because there is a fatal flaw in Obamacare from its inception, when it was created, when it was passed. Because how many Republican members of the House of Representatives voted for Obamacare?
0.
How many U.S. senators? 0.
Yeah.
You see, somebody, I don't know, in June of 2008 had raised this really good question, and it's been repeated by others. Tom Bevan, who does Real Clear Politics, is one of the people who asked it at a press conference, I remember, in June of 2008. okay, when Obama was not as, well, was certainly less well known.
Right.
Here's the guy running for president, and it went something like this. He said, and he asked this of Harold Ford, who did an artful job of dodging it. He was at a press conference here in Chicago. And he said, you know, is Barack Obama really a centrist disguised as a leftist, or is he a leftist disguised as a centrist? And I think it was a really good question. I really thought he was a centrist disguised as a leftist, but he is governed as if he is or was a leftist disguised as a centrist because, okay, so he ran and he got this tremendous victory to get a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate, and yet if he were really a centrist, he would have said, I'm not going to ram it through, although I can. I'm going to go to these folks, I'm going to invite them in, we're going to come up with a program that has buy-in from Republicans. Now, if Axelrod, now you know David much better because you're a fellow at the Institute of Politics, and I know that means you sit down and break bread
Of course,
with
yeah,
David every morning.
minute, yeah.
Every minute.
Yeah, no.
But
No.
seriously, you must have a sense, you've probably had a few conversations with David, I hope, before you went there and since you've been there at the Institute.
Sure.
Do you think David ever advised him and said, you know, you could do that, Barack, you could ram it through, you could pass it, but it might be better to, you know, bring along some Republicans. I mean, there are people like Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins who are moderate Republicans in the Senate.
Well, remember,
and in the House.
this started long before the health care, right? There was the stimulus bill was first and foremost, right?
But
Out of the box.
Didn't he get some people to vote
Just
for
a
the
couple,
stimulus? Just
right?
a few? Sure.
Three Republican senators.
Yeah, okay.
Only one of whom is still in the United States Senate, okay?
Okay.
So that sort of set the tone. Then we move into, and this was the argument, which was it's beyond just should you have cobbled together a bipartisan coalition. The other piece was this the right time to be doing healthcare reform, right? We still have an economy
Right.
that is struggling.
Absolutely.
That should be number one, number two, number three priority,
Right.
is getting the economy back on track, especially when it was clear that the stimulus still was not all that it was
And
cracked
we
up to
hear
be.
that
right?
his White House chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, now the mayor of Chicago, we hear he was saying to him just that.
Right, like this, let's put it off. And
Focus on
it's
the
not gonna-
economy. It's the
Right.
economy, stupid, as
Right.
Bill Clinton said.
Right.
I wonder
And
if
so
Rahm
you
said
put
to that
all of
too.
your capital, look, this is a decision every president gets to make, right? Here you have a chance, I have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, or if you have a Republican House, Republican Senate, and I'm a Republican, here is my opportunity to get pretty much what I want, right? I mean, it's never gonna happen like this again. So what do you do with that time that you have?
What do you do? If you
There
were
you go.
advising, now, because seriously at that, you know, you've spent 20 years doing this, and sometimes the media get involved, you know, go back and forth between government.
Yeah, I do not do that.
I know, but if you were, okay, just if you were, hypothetically, and you were there back in 2009, do you think, and you know politics, and you know what it's like to think about your legacy,
Well, that's
would
the
you have
thing.
advised
This is-
Barack? Would you have said to Barack, you know, maybe you should do, not maybe, why don't you just focus on the economy? We'll come back and get health care.
Or you
Show
say
this
we
country.
do, or you say we do a part of this, but we don't do the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Right? Let's not put all your capital and put all this effort into this while we still have to tackle.
Is that
this,
what you
this,
would have
and this.
advised Barack?
I
if
don't
you
know.
You don't know?
No, I'm not in the business of telling the president what to do. What
Not
I
even
do know
hypothet-
is.
I mean, if you were
what
out
I do
drinking,
know is
just
that
between us girls, you know.
Yeah, right. And all of you.
And all of you.
Look, the thing with the healthcare bill, well, which is now the healthcare law, is that we just don't know. I said this at the beginning, but we honestly don't know what the legacy of this is going to be, right? So as a president, you say, you sort of put down that marker, and you know when you leave office, you're going to be judged immediately by what you did. But then 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 years later,
That's the
that's
real
what
judgment.
you're. But it is notable that it was controversial in 2009. It was obviously problematic in 2010 for Democrats. In the 2012 election, there was not one ad run by the Obama campaign, not one English language ad that mentioned Obamacare.
Of course, they didn't want to. They
Not
they
one.
did everything they could to push this ahead.
That's right. So that's sort of telling, right? When that is
He knew
your legacy, and yet it's not something that you wanted to talk about during your re-election
Don't you
campaign.
think it might have been better, seriously? Last time I'll ask him, we'll go. Don't you think it might have been better if you were sitting there advising him and said,
And you
look,
say,
Barack,
look, do you want to win the House, or do you want to hold on to the Senate, or do you want to?
no, why don't you just say, do you want to be known as a great president? And, I mean, if I were there, okay, I'll do it. If I were there, I would say, and Barack did 6 shows, he sat where you're sitting, I'd say, look, Barack, the economy is the main thing, okay? And you may take a different approach, I know that, I understand that, in terms of how you would create jobs, but you really need to focus on that. Do something on health care, do a small part. That's what I would say, number 1. And then 2, yeah, invite the Republicans in. Be the centrist. You'll go down as a great president.
Just let me ask you this. Do you think that there is the capacity where we are now in our political culture to have a bipartisan, it doesn't matter who's president, but a bipartisan piece of legislation that does significant things?
Sure, and that's why I thought, I really thought Barack was the kind of person to do that. I don't think a lot of people could. I don't think you're right. The atmosphere is not conducive to that. It takes a person who really wants to do it, who's charming, who knows how to, and this stuff is really not true, that he doesn't know politics, he doesn't work with politics. As people point out who know him, when he was in the state Senate, he did a lot of that. He passed 25 pieces of legislation, some of it major. I know it's only the state Senate, but it was capital punishment reform, it was ethics reform. He played poker with people in the Republican Party. I mean, he did this stuff. People who say this, they don't know jack, okay? They really don't. Or folks, if you've been saying this as a political pundit, you don't know jack. You don't know Jack Ryan, you don't know Barack Obama. But seriously, I think he could have been. He really, I did say, and many others said, he transcended politics, remember?
Yeah.
He transcended race. He transcended everything. I mean, how else could a guy come in as relatively inexperienced as he was? He's really been in the U.S. Senate for only 2 years when he started running for president of the United States. You must have had a lot of good skills or nobody would have even taken you seriously.
Right.
So I'm just saying he blew it, don't you think?
Well, it's your definition. I mean, look, we could go back and forth on this. The reality is,
yeah, let's go on.
You know, he made his decision, and now it's both the political consequences have been clear, at least in 2010, and now we have to see what the actual real
so let's go to
rubber
your
meets the
strength.
road consequences.
We're here on October 28th, 2013. The midterm elections are now just about a year away.
Yep.
We've gone through the Fed government, shutdown. People said the Republican Party trademark has gone down, significant numbers. Some recent polls show 52% sort of think Barack's doing the right thing for the country. I'm paraphrasing. And 20% think the Republicans. I think that's, I don't know, AB7, Washington Post, something like that. Is it 7, ABC, Washington Post? Yeah. So the conventional wisdom, forget the conventional wisdom. What do you think? How will the Republicans do in 2014? If you had to make your best guess right now, a year away, will they keep the House? Will they possibly win the Senate?
So can we start with the Senate?
Sure.
Okay. So this is their best chance. Well, this is their second best chance to take control of the Senate. 2012 was supposed to be the year that they were going to take the Senate because there were so many seats that were vulnerable that Democrats held. And you could see the math, how that lined up. And then Republicans nominated some pretty bad candidates. And such as Todd Akin in Missouri, Richard Murdoch in Indiana. And then you had a blue state senator in Scott Brown who just got overwhelmed in a presidential year, right? Yeah. So put 2012 then over to the side. Now we look forward and we say, boy, Democrats have a lot of tough seats to defend. I mean, this is tougher than 2012. They have Montana, they have West Virginia, they have South Dakota. I mean, these are very rare red states. These are Democratic-held seats.
But Republican states.
But Republican states, Alaska, Louisiana, right? Arkansas, those are all up. So when you look just purely at the numbers, you say, oh, I can get to 6. You just take every state that Mitt Romney carried.
Keep what you have.
Keep what you have, and just win 6.
You get the majority, right?
But it would mean knocking off a number of incumbents, which you'd need to beat at least 3 incumbents, which is not easy to do.
Who are?
You'd need to beat either I'll just throw out some. Mark Begich, who's the senator from Alaska.
First term, one term incumbent.
Mary Landrieu from Louisiana.
Long term incumbent.
Pryor in Arkansas, Mark Pryor, this is his second term.
But all those folks are not doing so well now.
Well, what they are is, and Kay Hagan in North Carolina,
those
who's
four,
new.
those are the main ones, okay.
Right.
And I don't know how Kay's doing, but the other ones are not doing so well in the polling, right?
Well.
Are they? I mean, you would know.
There hasn't been that much public polling yet, to be fair. Look, the Arkansas seat is one of the toughest. Yeah. It is a state that
should be Republican.
It's very red.
Except for Bill Clinton, there's no reason to think about anything in the state.
And Pryor, which is a family name. Right. You know, his father was senator, and so that's a very, very tough seat. But again, we could be back where we were in 2010 and 2012. Republicans putting up candidates who, candidates who win a primary, who end up being way too far out of the mainstream, and terrible general election candidates.
So you're saying that's the danger. If the Tea Party or others who are somewhat out of the mainstream, although I've articulated, if they were to focus on what I said, I think they'd be in the mainstream. But they should avoid the kind of candidates
that we all know, that have made.
There are things you just shouldn't say.
Yeah, we don't.
Put a target on your back, and they
right.
did.
So that makes it
that shouldn't be that hard. Mobilize, energize, use the Tea Party, because it was very helpful to the Republicans in 2010.
Sure.
But don't do anything stupid.
But it was really helpful until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right. And there are places where.
And so, but you have to get people.
But you have to get people to beat, experienced politicians.
Right.
So
will they do that? Will the Republican Party get smart?
I think they'll pick up some seats, but I don't think that. I mean, getting to 6 seats is. It requires everything falling into place.
If you had to say now, they don't do it. It's like getting a royal flush or something.
Okay.
And what about the House? Do they keep
the House? Structurally, Republicans have great advantage, right? Because of how the seats are drawn.
So nothing changes. They keep the House in 2014. They pick up a few seats, but not the Senate.
And maybe they lose some seats in the House.
So, but pretty much it's the same. And then Obama's a lame duck. He's just writing it out. Folks, you can fall asleep. I mean, seriously, between now and 2016, there's nothing major that's going to happen, would you say?
That's probably true. Now, here's the question.
The country can go on
you guys can go turn this
off.
Well,
the government can. The private sector can keep generating wealth and making you've got food on the table.
Here's the question.
See, it doesn't all relate to the government. We forget that.
Really? Here's what.
Tell David Axelrod
Republicans are going to have, it's going to be an interesting couple of years for I think, for the Republicans as they're struggling to kind of figure out who they are, what they want to be.
Maybe they could win the majority in the Senate. They could get that 6.
Absolutely.
If they got a streamlined, focused message. Paul Ryan says it has to be the message. Ted Cruz says you need to be more conservative. Who's right? Are they both right? In fact, between those two, who's likely to be president, Cruz or
Neither.
Ryan? Neither? Who do you think's likely?
I think it's much more likely you're going to see a governor coming out.
Which one?
I mean, there are a number out there. You got Chris Christie from New Jersey. You have Scott Walker up the street in Wisconsin. You have Mike Pence from Indiana. There are a good number. Bobby Jindal from Louisiana. A lot of folks. Rick Perry wants to run again.
Okay. Well, we got about a minute left, so you got to come back.
Okay.
And you got to tell us in a minute what's great about the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago.
The students. I mean, these are some incredibly smart kids who are much more put together than I was at 19.
Right, wow. They're smart. And
they're
yet
smart,
people say...
But they're thinking about what they want to do in the future, how they want to impact the world.
David Axelrod as smart as people think he is?
He's smart.
Can he keep up with the students?
I think so. That's a very good question. I haven't had to see. I haven't
Could you
seen
get David to come out?
He
He said he would do the show to me about like 8 years ago. Then he got involved with that guy Obama, and then he went to D.C. These really bad excuses. Could you get him to come out? Could you do it?
We'll see.
You do it for me. Okay. Cool.
All right.
So the students will make the Institute of Politics. If you could, would you stay there forever? Or would you like to become a tenured professor at the University of Chicago? Because I could do that for you if you want.
You can just put me on the fast track. Do I have to? I need a PhD.
No, we can.
Oh, really? I can.
You have the equivalent of a PhD in political science from the 20 years that you've done it?
I'm sure the academics are.